Is that better? Okay. I need a big sign put on the back wall that says, "Turn on the microphone." Have a good group here tonight. Good crowd. Thank you so much. It's encouraging to look back and see a good number for class. We are in John 21. That's on page 166. Well, in my Bible, I don't know, you're on your own to find it. I did help John McBroom by telling him that it was in the New Testament. I think that helped. And for those of you who were here Sunday night, the sermon was Sometimes You Make Me So Angry. And I just got word that Brian Charley Bull, he said to him, "You make me so angry." So now we know another thing that can make you angry. Let's have a prayer together, shall we? Our Father, we're grateful for all of your blessings. They are rich, plentiful. You bless us above what we deserve. We thank you for who you are and for all of the good things that you do in our lives. We're thankful that we're able to be here. There are those who can't be, but we are able physically to be here. We thank you for that. Pray that we might open up our minds to study your word. Not to have preconceived ideas, but just simply to look at the word and let it speak to us. We thank you for each person here. For those who are in other classes in our building, would you bless them as they study together? May this study draw us closer to one another and to you. We pray it through Jesus. Amen. A lot of ink has been spilled on John 21. There are those who doubt that John wrote it. And then there are those who say, yes, John wrote it, but he did not write it at the same time he wrote the first 20 chapters. And I will admit that it sounds very much like the book comes to an end in chapter 20. If you read the end of chapter 20, it says, "And truly Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." Sounds like the end, doesn't it? I have no reason to doubt that John wrote chapter 21. I'm not sure that he wrote it at the same time he wrote the other 20 chapters. This is a prelude to the book. I believe it may very well have been written a little later. But when you think about things like that, they don't matter a great deal, do they? John wrote it. It's true. It tells us about Jesus. It creates faith in Jesus for us, and that's the whole purpose of John's writings. So whether he wrote it at the same time or not, or whether there were some years that passed and he put a P.S. on the end of the book or not, is not all that important. The chapter begins by saying, after these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And in this way he showed himself. This is the third time he appeared to the apostles. Remember, on the first Sunday evening, he appeared to all of them, except Thomas was not there. Of course, Judas was gone by this time. He appeared to them a week later when Thomas was present, and here he appears to 7 of them. It is the 12th time that he makes a public appearance. So if you're keeping score, this is number 12 times that he appears to people, and this is the 3rd time that he appears to the apostles, or some of the apostles. And he does so at the Sea of Tiberias. Now, we normally don't call it the Sea of Tiberias. What do we call it? Galilee. Tiberias was a city that was on the shores of the lake. And so sometimes it was referred to as here, the Sea of Tiberias. We know it better as the Sea of Galilee. And notice that, and in this way he showed himself. John is saying he showed himself. Now, let me tell you how he did it. Let me tell you the way that he did it. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Now, you know that scholars like to debate things that they can't really know the answer to, and it doesn't matter anyway. In this verse, what do you suppose they like to debate? Who the other? Why would Simon Peter say, "I'm going fishing"?
That's what he did for a living.
That's what he had done for a living prior to being called as an apostle. And that was comfortable. Now, as we've said, it's not like he took a cane pole and a bobber and went out and caught some brim. This was on the Sea of Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee, with a net. And they had done it professionally. Peter and Andrew and James and John, 2 sets of brothers. And so I think it's just kind of familiar. It's just kind of comfortable. They had seen the resurrected Lord already. But I don't think yet they fully understood the significance of what was going on. Now, we're rough on them, I think. I think we say, if I had been there, but I'm not sure that's right. They were trying to see through this. They were trying to work their way through this. We've got 2,000 years of history, and we've got Scripture to help us understand. They didn't have that. And so I think that they're kind of saying, we're not sure what we ought to do. Where do we go? What's next? And so Simon Peter says, I'm going to go do something that's comfortable, but not only that. Why else would he go fishing? They needed to eat. That's exactly right. And if you are careful in reading the Gospels, you notice that very often they ate fish and cakes of some kind, bread of some kind. And so this is just kind of like, okay, it's comfortable. I'll go fishing. We'll catch some fish. We'll cook the fish. We'll make some loaves. And at least we'll have something to eat while we're waiting for this to happen, whatever's going to happen, whatever it is that's going to happen. And they said to him, we are going with you also. Now, I think they're just giving in to the leadership of Peter, but it sounds like a pretty good idea to the rest of them. They're not all professional fishermen, but they need to eat, and so it's something to do. And so they say, we will go too. And they went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. Very often on the Sea of Galilee, the fishing was done at night. So it's not strange that they would fish at night. The strange thing was that they had toiled all night and they'd caught no fish. Now that's got to be discouraging, isn't it? I know from what fishing I've done, there's a great deal of pleasure just in being there and just in fishing on the sea, not on the sea, on the bank, along the river or creek or in a lake or whatever. But they needed food. And the fact that they had fished all night and those nets, to put them out and pull them in and find out there's nothing there and to cast them out again and pull them in and find that there's nothing there would be very discouraging and very tiring. And when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know it was Jesus. Now, later we find out how far away he was. Who knows? 100 yards. So Jesus is on the shore at 100 yards and they're out in the boat. Now, you say that's a long way to see anybody. Well, you can understand them seeing somebody and not knowing immediately it was the Lord. They could make out some kind of figure and not know exactly who it was. And they did not know it was Jesus, according to verse 4. Then Jesus said to them, children. One translation says boys, which I think is kind of interesting. It's a tender thing. Boys, have you caught any fish? Do you have any food? And they answered, no. Now, who might they have thought it was? They don't know it's Jesus yet. But who might they have expected it to be? Absolutely. The fishmongers traditionally did this. I remember fishing in Alaska and going out on a boat and coming back in, and gathered around there were people who wanted to know if we had any fish. And of course, we were carrying some fish, and they said, did we want to sell it? And we said no. But all up and down there, you could see people who were checking the boats as they came in and wanting to know if there was fish for sale. So they thought perhaps it's a fishmonger. And they say, no, we haven't caught any fish. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. Now, here is one of the things, we're going to see a miracle here, but this is one of the things that really surprises me about the apostles. They don't know who this is. And so this figure 100 yards away is saying, cast your net on the right side and you'll catch some fish. What would you think they might have said?
I'm tired.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Who are you? What do you know about fishing? You're standing on the bank and we're out here in the boat and we've made our living fishing, and so just take a hike. They did, yes, ma'am.
Isn't that what Peter said the first time Jesus told him to do this?
Yes.
Their hearts are different, maybe.
Yes. And that's a good point. There are similarities between this and the first time, but there are also some very glaring differences. And so here we see that there is some flicker of faith. They have some reason to think that this voice is authoritative. And so they just cast the net on the right side of the boat and they draw it in. And guess what? There's a multitude of fish. Now, if you read further on, bless John's heart. He is the man who gives you the details. How many fish were there? 153. Can you imagine whose job it was to count them? And like now hold still there. Don't flop around in the net. 1, 2, 3. Now hold still. But they came up with 153 fish. And this was simply because they followed the instruction of the Lord, although they weren't really sure at this point who it was. They had enough of whatever to try it. They were frustrated, they were tired, but they cast the net in and brought forth this great draught of fish.
I think they do now. I think at that point they realize.
Now they're going to realize in just a minute, yes, at this point, I think they're beginning to get the message that maybe this is not just some fishmonger from one of the little towns around the Sea of Galilee, but this is indeed the Lord. And they weren't able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. Therefore, that disciple whom Jesus loved, ding, 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 John, said to Peter, "It's the Lord." John's like, this is somebody, I know who this is. This is the Lord. And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. Now, some translations will say he was naked. I don't believe that he was naked. He had on his undergarment, the linen cloth that would have been worn closest to the body, and a robe was worn on top of that. But he's out there and he's fishing. It's messy, smelly business. I don't know what the temperature is, but he just strips off and has as little as possible on. But he says, I got to go see this. And he puts on his outer garment and jumps into the sea. Bless his heart. Don't you love Simon Peter? And sometimes he gets it so wrong, but sometimes he gets it so right. He's impetuous, but here he says, if that's the Lord, I've got to see him. And I think I can get there faster swimming than I can get there in this boat with this load of fish that they were towing, obviously, because they couldn't get it all into the boat. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from land, but about 200 cubits, dragging the net with fish. Now, a cubit is basically the length from the ruler's elbow to his index finger, somewhere around 18 inches. It's hard to say definitely it was always the same, because you had tall guys who were ruling and short guys who were ruling, but usually 16 to 21 inches. And so most people say like a foot and a half. And so if you put that together, 200 cubits would be 100 yards. And so they're towing this draught of fishes. Then as soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. What's Jesus prepared for them? Breakfast. Yeah. Remember, they had fished all night. Now, is there a question you want to know right now? Who said?
How did Jesus get the fish?
Where did he get his fish? That's right. Yeah, I don't know. Had he got a cane pole and gone down to the lake and caught it? Had he bought it from somebody? Was it a miraculous thing? I don't know. But he had fish, and he had cakes, bread, and he's got this charcoal fire, and he's stirring up some breakfast. What do you see developing here? Do you see anything happening, the dynamic here? Maybe that's an obtuse question. You don't have any idea what I'm talking about, but sometimes I don't either. So,
Some sort of reunion going on.
I'm sorry?
Some sort of reunion.
Yes. I think it is a restoration of relationships. Now, they had seen Jesus under various circumstances. Thomas was there, wasn't there, then he was there. Simon Peter says, let's go fishing. It's kind of like, what's going on? I think this is, let's get it together and let me commission you one more time. Because what I see in chapter 21 is a commission. We talk about the Great Commission of Matthew 16 or Matthew 28 and Mark 16. But I think we have a commission here. I think it is that get together, and he wants them to know that everything's okay. And Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught." So he doesn't have enough for everybody to have all they want. So he says, "You get some of yours. I've got it started here." And Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not broken. Do you see some miraculous things happening here? I think the throw your fish, your net on the right-hand side and catch the fish, I don't know if that was providential. I don't know if that was miraculous, but it was not normal and usual. And here he says it's 153 large fish, but it didn't break the net. As if to say, you would expect the net to be broken by that big a number of large fish. And so it seems like that the Lord is at work in bringing these things about.
Well, there's something else there too. They couldn't pull that net in the boat, but Peter went down there and pulled it up.
Yeah. Wonder how he did that. He was a strong man.
Well, bad dude, but
I don't know if it was easier on the land than it would to get it into the water and up into the boat. I don't know.
a lot of times, you hear of people like when they lift the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably he was sort of saying,
It could very well be that.
they had Jesus on the mountain next to Galilee after the resurrection. Was that after this or before that?
Now say that again.
In Matthew,
Yes.
it states that he had appointed to meet them on the mountain
Yes.
in Galilee. Was that before or after this?
Depends on the writing, what you take as the writing. I happen to think that this may have been added later. And I'm going to tell you why in a little bit. And so, taking that position, I would take this afterwards.
I would too, because on the mountaintop, he was asking Peter the question.
Yes.
So, Peter would be a little hesitant about jumping into the sea and running down.
Yeah. Yeah.
A good blessing out, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I would say it's after too.
Good question. When you try to put Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John together and correlate them, you can run into all kinds of trouble. Did this happen before this happened, before this happened, before this happened, before this happened? And sometimes you just can't know.
It's like a movie. Sometimes there's flashbacks. And even in the writing, you'll get them to kind of jump around.
You're right about movies. I saw one time. Yeah.
Yeah, they have talkies now.
That's really bad, Brian. That's really bad.
I think it's also each person's perception from their point of view.
Well,
Not everybody sees the same thing, or
I don't know. I have things in mind that I'd like to preach on sometime. And one of them is the perception of Jesus from each of the Gospels. Matthew's account, Mark, how does Mark? It depends on who they're writing to. It depends on what they're dealing with. And so each one is from a different perspective. And John, being the last one written, is kind of like, okay, you've got all this other stuff, now let me fill in the blanks. And he does a pretty good job at that. This is the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. And when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Now, Simon, son of Jonah, does it bring back anything?
When your mom calls you your full name.
After he betrayed him.
Okay. Anybody else got an idea? Well, get on my wavelength here, or I'll get on yours or something.
When he asked, who do people say I am?
Who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am? Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it to thee, but my Father which is in heaven. A bar is the word for son, son of. And so here he says, son of Jonah, in Matthew 16 is the passage that John and I were talking about. He calls him Bar-Jonah, which is the same as saying, son of Jonah, do you love me? Now here again, scholars have spilled ink on this one. There are two words used for love in this exchange. The broader term is agape. It's the love that God has for us, for God so loved the world. Agape is accepting people, wanting the best for them, and loving them in spite of themselves. The other word is phileo, from which we get Philadelphia. We talk about the city of brotherly love. Delphia means city. Philadelphia means the city of brotherly love. Phileo is affection. So the question here is, does Jesus mean to make a distinction by using these two words? Yes, no. There are people who say in John, sometimes they're used interchangeably, and that's true. Others say, no, he's meaning to make a distinction here. Let me just help us go through this. Simon, son of Jonah, do you agape me more than these? Now, there's another question we want to know just from reading that question.
What did you ask?
Who are these?
What are these? Who are these? What are these? Could it, if we had been there, which would have been great to have that little bird's eye view, I'm sure that Jesus gestured, and we would know. Did he gesture to the other apostles and say, do you love me more than these other guys? They're out here. They obviously love you. Remember that Simon Peter had professed his love for Jesus. He would never leave him. Do you love me more than these? Maybe he's doing a panoramic view and talking about all of the sights and the sounds and the smells of Galilee. Because if there was one place that Peter was at home, was comfortable, it was in a boat fishing on the Sea of Galilee. And here he had gone back to that, remember. So is Jesus saying, do you love me more than these things? I don't know. There's no way for us to know. If I had to come down in mid-air, I suspect it's the sights and sounds of Galilee. But it could very well be the other apostles. But Simon Peter answered, Lord, you know that I phileo you. I am fond of you. I have brotherly love for you. And he said, feed my lambs. Now, in Peter's writings, we're going to find out he was not only an apostle, it was an elder. And so maybe here he's referring to the work that he would do as an elder in the church. Feed my lambs. And he said to him again the second time, Simon Bar-Jonah, do you agape me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I phileo you. He said to him, tend my sheep. And he said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you phileo me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you phileo me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I phileo you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Now, do you see any significance here at all in what happens?
Well, number one, I think Jesus knew Peter needed this because he had denied him 3 times.
He denied him 3 times. He's going to confess him 3 times. I think it's a lesson to Simon Peter. Jesus is saying, I have restored you. I have had breakfast with you. He didn't bawl him out for going fishing. He just said, do you really love me? I'm fond of you. Do you really love me? I'm fond of you. Okay. Are you really fond of me? Yeah. Now, one reason that it's hard to make a case out of this from Greek is because while it was written in Greek, I don't imagine they were speaking Greek. Do you know that the language that they normally spoke at this time was Aramaic? And so it was not Greek that they were speaking. So this may very well be a translation of an Aramaic term. There's only one term in Aramaic for love. There's about 4 in Greek for love. One of them is eros. You know what kind of love that is? Erotic love. There is storge, which is strong brotherly love, like you would have for a physical family member. And then you have the 2 used here, phileo and agape. I don't know whether the Lord is trying to make a point with this or not. I remember preaching a sermon where I vowed and declared in the sermon that he was. Can I tell you that I've thrown a lot of my old sermons away? Because I think that being a preacher is like anything else. You grow and develop in that, and you learn more. And the more I studied, the less sure I was that I was right in that. John's shaking his head like you've experienced that thing too, haven't you, John? Yeah.
Tom, do you also
Yes.
think that it was an opportunity for Peter to forgive himself for denying Jesus? An opportunity for Peter to forgive himself.
Okay.
He seems very stubborn the way you read it.
Yeah, it is. If you take the idea that he meant to make a distinction in the 2 words, he is being a little stubborn about it. If you don't, then it doesn't matter. You know, he's not. I believe that one of the things that's happening here is Peter is making this triune confession for his own benefit, but also for the benefit of the other apostles. I think the lesson is if Jesus could forgive Peter, The rest of the guys are okay. Because what Peter did was a terrible thing. He denied knowing the Lord. He'd been with him for 3 years plus and said, I don't even know him. I'm not one of his. You're mistaken. We sometimes say, well, the Lord couldn't forgive me. Don't ever feel that way. Nobody is outside of the grace of God. And here, if Peter could come back into a covenant relationship with Jesus, anybody could. And so it may be that he is making this confession for his sake, yes, 3 times. I denied him 3 times, I'll confess him 3 times. But also to say to the rest of the apostles, it's okay. We didn't get this right all the time. We made some mistakes. But we are back in a relationship with him. And I think this breakfast by the sea has shown that. I aimed for us to get through with this tonight. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he spoke concerning by what death he would glorify God. Now, what does that tell you about the writing of chapter 21? This argues for the fact that it was later, because Peter was already dead, and John saw the connection. When you were young, and I suspect, knowing Simon Peter as a mature man, would you have expected he was a real wild guy as a young? I mean, he went, he did, he got around, and went where he wanted to, did what he wanted to do. But John says, when you're old, things are different. You'll stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry where you do not wish. Referring to the way Peter would die, which was by crucifixion. But John knew that. So it indicates to me that this is probably written after the death of John. You can take that for what it's worth.
Well, that's about 25 or 30 years after the death of Peter, because they think that John was written in.
Yeah, John wrote.
Around that, and
Yeah.
Peter died in 64.
Yeah. John wrote mid-90s somewhere, and so it would have been 30 years or so after Peter dead. So Peter had been dead a while. And he said to him, follow me. I'm going to have to stop it there, okay, because we have what's the movie at the gate? Something at the gate. We got children at the gate. Read 1 John 1. 1 John 1, not John 1, 1 John 1. That's the epistles. And we will make the transition from this letter into, or this gospel into the letters, okay? With just a very few